Лукашенко должны немедленно извиниться перед Литвой, притом публично за это. Ну и же пошли нах и так далее.
Putin's Western strongholds are crumbling under two simultaneous crises. The first is loud, chaotic, and panic-filled.
Именно такую цель преследовали некоторые наши соседи, провернув эту безумную аферу с закрытием границ.
While simultaneously winking at the West by declaring,
Открою секрет, с американцами ведем переговоры.
the second is silent, cold, and deadly. Russia's dagger plunged into the heart of Europe. Its unsinkable aircraft carrier, stronghold of Kaliningrad, is now drowning.
Литва угрожает отрезать Калининград от большой России. На этой неделе Вильнюс закрыл сухопутную границу с Белоруссией, чтобы, внимание, не допускать пролета на свою территорию воздушных шаров.
Its logistical lifeline, its oil and transit route, has been cut off by someone. These two events are not independent of each other. One is screaming in panic, while the other is silently suffocating. This is no coincidence. This is a perfectly planned, two-pronged destruction operation against Putin. First, let's examine the silent and deadly one, Kaliningrad. How has Putin marketed Kaliningrad to the Russian people for years? Our fortress in the heart of Europe, our unsinkable aircraft carrier, our dagger stuck in the heart of Europe against NATO, home of the Baltic Fleet, an invincible center of threat filled with nuclear-capable Iskander missiles. But this fortress had one fatal weakness: logistics. Look at the map. That fortress is actually an island. Russia has no land connection to its homeland. Everything, fuel, military supplies, food, depended on railways passing through NATO member Lithuania. That railway line was Kaliningrad's lifeline. And on October 31st, 2025, Lithuania cut that lifeline. The official statement reads, Lithuanian railways will completely ban the transit of petroleum products belonging to Russian oil giants Lukoil and Rosneft starting November 21st. So, why now? And why is it different this time? Because this is a legal trap. This is a perfect application of NATO's new generation war doctrine. It all started on October 23rd to 24th. The US Treasury Department, OFAC, and the UK announced secondary sanctions against Russia's two energy giants, namely the state-owned Rosneft and the supposedly private Lukoil.
Two largest Russian oil companies, they account for, I think, nearly half of Russia's crude oil exports. So these are big fish.
What does this technical term mean? Let me explain it simply. Secondary sanctions mean any company, any bank, anywhere in the world that does business with these companies, Lukoil, Rosneft, will be cut off from the dollar and sterling system. Their access to international finance will be cut off. This move directly targeted Lithuania. Why? Because who was transporting that oil to Kaliningrad? Lithuanian state railways. Lithuania, a NATO member, was suddenly forced to make a choice. Option 1. Continue transporting fuel to Putin's stronghold, the Baltic Fleet. In return, be excluded from the financial system by the US and UK like a terror sponsor, go bankrupt. The second option was comply with the sanctions, turn off the tap, and survive. The answer came on October 31st. LTG said, we must comply with the sanctions, and set November 21st as the deadline. Let's look at the numbers. LTG transported exactly 371,000 tons of petroleum products to Kaliningrad in 2024. Of this, 345,000 tons, or almost all of it, belonged to Lukoil, which is now on the sanctions list. This is Kaliningrad's civilian fuel. This is the fuel for Kaliningrad's tanks, ships, and jets. This is the lifeblood of Putin's fortress, the Baltic Fleet. And on November 21st, this flow of lifeblood stops, completely. Can Putin respond militarily? When the EU imposed sanctions in 2022, he shouted, threatened, and Germany backed down out of fear. But this time, there are no political decisions from Brussels standing in his way. Facing him is a financial execution order from the US Treasury. Who will he invade? ASWIFT code? A bank transaction? Putin's tanks and missiles have become completely useless in the face of an OFAC sanctions document. This demonstrates how his military doctrine, which he sold to the Russian people as invincible, is powerless in the face of a bank transaction. So, what will Putin do now? Can he say, okay, if the railway is closed, I'll transport by road, with trucks through Belarus? The second and simultaneous blow of the operation provides the answer to this question. Putin's Plan B has also been destroyed. The land bridge is dead. As this oil embargo news broke, Lithuania and Poland were conducting another operation on the Belarusian border. The balloon crisis erupted. These are the smuggling balloons you know about. They are sent by Belarus to smuggle cigarettes into Lithuania and create a hybrid crisis. In the past, Lithuania turned a blind eye to this, but not anymore. You know how the Lithuanian Prime Minister and President defined these balloons: a threat to national security and a hybrid attack.
Taip siunčiame signalą Baltarusijai ir sakome, kad jokia hibridinė ataka nebus toleruojama čionai.
And on October 27th, using this hybrid attack as an excuse,
Lithuania has announced a temporary closure of its border crossings with Belarus. It comes after a series of air traffic disruptions.
Lithuania indefinitely closed its last two key border crossings with Belarus, Medininkai and Salchininkai. Poland also closed its borders. So, are you wondering who is behind this hybrid attack? Lukashenko himself. According to information shared yesterday by Polish opposition leader Paweł Latuszka, Lukashenko himself confirmed that he was in contact with the smugglers bringing cigarettes into Lithuania and admitted that the border committee did not oppose these actions, i.e., turned a blind eye. See the trap? This is flawless coordination. On one side, Kaliningrad, the US's legal sanctions cut off OIL transit by rail. On the other side, Belarus, the hybrid attack, balloons, admitted by Lukashenko himself, provided the necessary legal basis to cut off TIR transit to NATO by land. Kaliningrad now has neither fuel nor land connection. Putin's Plan B, truck shipments via Belarus, was also destroyed at the same time as Plan A, train shipments via Lithuania. Putin's impregnable fortress instantly turned into a fuelless, landless, and defenseless prison. Putin trapped his own fortress and the Baltic fleet in a trap with his own hands. This is the picture of how Putin, who promised the Russian people a greater Russia and claimed, "We have brought NATO to its knees," lost his last piece of land in Europe without firing a single shot. But the closing of this trap did not only hit Kaliningrad, it also ensnared Putin's last ally, Lukashenko. Now, let's look at the whole picture. Why is Lukashenko so panicked? Why is he shouting, "Crazy fraud"? Here are those moments.
Именно такую цель преследовали некоторые наши соседи, провернув эту безумную аферу с закрытием границ.
As you can see, he is in a panic. But why? We analyzed it months ago. Lukashenko had a plan. The big deal. Lukashenko saw that Putin was losing in Ukraine. He dreamed of jumping off this sinking ship, betraying Putin, and secretly making a deal with the US to save himself. He admitted this himself. Look, these are his own words.
Открою секрет, с американцами ведем переговоры. По-разному тяжело идут эти переговоры.
This dream of a grand bargain, this plan of betrayal, collapsed on October 27. Because for this plan to work, it needed one thing: doors open to the West. That is, the borders of Poland and Lithuania. His economy depended on it. The escape route to the West depended on it. And on October 27th to 29th, those last doors were slammed shut in his face because of the balloons. While Lukashenko was plotting to betray Putin, he suddenly found himself locked in the same cell with Putin. So on October 31st, he appeared before the cameras in a panic. This speech was not one of anger, it was a confession. As Belarusian opposition leader Paweł Latuszka pointed out, Lukashenko realized that day that the grand bargain he had dreamed of was not about lifting sanctions by selling hostages. The West wanted real change from him, and he had fallen into a trap. Caught in this trap, he tried to play his last card. He confessed that he had made a secret deal with Poland, that he had begged. Lukashenko told Poland,
Признаю это, уважаю. Ну хорошо, обменяем. Почабута хотите? Мы готовы пойти и на это.
Poczobut is the most important Polish political prisoner held hostage in Belarus. He is a matter of national importance for Poland. Lukashenko offered this most valuable hostage to Poland. Do you know what he wanted in return? Peace? Security guarantees? Number. Just open one of the border crossings. Can you imagine? A country's leader is offering his most strategic political hostage just to open a border crossing. This is not a bargain, this is begging. So, what was Poland's, a NATO member, response? No. Poland rejected the exchange, using balloons and national security as excuses. They didn't even take Poczobut. What does this mean? It proves that Lukashenko's bargaining power is zero. He can't bargain, he's begging. His plan to escape to the West, his dream of a grand bargain, has completely collapsed. So what did he do in the end, in his desperation? He had a complete nervous breakdown. According to Nexta's report, Lukashenko said he demanded that the Americans publicly apologize to him for the balloons. And do you know what his response was? In his own words,
Лукашенко должны немедленно извиниться перед Литвой, притом публично за это. Ну и же пошли нах и так далее.
This is not a show of strength. It is the desperate cry of a trapped man cursing the Americans with whom he tried to make the big deal. He even went further and blamed the Lithuanians, making the absurd claim that
Полетели неизвестно куда. Их кто-то там принял.
Lukashenko now has no cards left to play against the West. He can no longer betray Putin and escape. He is no longer Putin's ally. He is a hostage, drowning alongside Putin. Putin couldn't even protect his own ally from NATO's economic and logistical pressure. This is the collapse of that hollow lie called the Union State. The Russian people are watching live how their leaders couldn't even protect their closest ally, how they are trapped. Lukashenko's trapped state is reflected in the utter chaos of his recent speeches. On the one hand, he begs the West, while on the other, he makes the most absurd and contradictory statements to prove his loyalty to Putin. First contradiction: nuclear threat. On the one hand, he seeks a grand bargain, while on the other, he threatens the West. He blames Ukraine for the start of the war in Donbass, claims that Russian speakers are being oppressed, and most dangerously, confirms that Russia's hypersonic Oreshnik missile will be combat-ready by December. This is Putin threatening the West with nuclear war through Lukashenko's mouth. The second contradiction is the Suwalki nightmare. In the same speeches, while brandishing nuclear threats on the one hand, he makes a confession of fear on the other. He says,
Ну, если мы не оттяпаем Польшу, а может быть Прибалтику, а может быть все вместе, ну как минимум на Сувалский коридор, чепуха полная. Никуда мы не нацелены. Никакая Европа, Париж и Лондон нам не нужны. Даже Литва и Польша, даже Вильнюс и Варшава.
This is not a show of force. It is another way of saying, please don't attack us, we have no such intention. It shows that NATO's Phase Zero plan is working, that deterrence is working. And finally, the third contradiction. Lukashenko is in complete economic desperation, spewing hatred toward Europe.
Чертом этих европейцев оздоровляем. Мы должны работать и для себя.
This is a man whose economy has collapsed due to closed borders, saying, I didn't want it anyway. This chaos, these contradictions, show the whole world, and most importantly, the Russian people, how helpless and fragmented Putin's Union State is, and how its leader is experiencing a mental collapse. Putin's ally has become an unreliable, panicked, and dangerous clown. So, what is the real strategy behind NATO's coordinated, ruthless, and perfectly timed move? Why now? The answer lies in a document leaked on November 1st, just 24 hours after all these events. This is the key that connects all these pieces. In fact, the war has already begun. This is not an exercise plan. This is a war plan. NATO Supreme Allied Commander Europe, Christopher Donahue, presented a 4,400-page comprehensive defense concept to 32 NATO members. Its name, Eastern Front Deterrence Line Concept, and the key phrase, Phase Zero. What does a former NATO general tell the Welt newspaper? After the war in Ukraine ends, the threat of a Russian attack will reach its highest level. We are already in Phase Zero. Do you understand? Putin thought that by attacking Ukraine, he would push NATO back. But he did the exact opposite. Putin's aggression woke NATO up from its 30-year slumber. As the head of the Estonian Foreign Intelligence Service said, the troops Russia has amassed at the borders are greatly shortening the warning time for NATO. And NATO's new 4,400-page doctrine now mandates a proactive, preemptive defense. not a reactive, responsive one. Phase 0 means not waiting for the war to start, but crippling the enemy's logistics, economy, and allies before the war begins. Now look again at Kaliningrad and Belarus. This is Phase 0 itself. Cutting off Kaliningrad's oil with secondary sanctions. This is Phase 0. Trapping Lukashenko with the balloons excuse. This is Phase 0. NATO is eliminating the fuel for those tanks, Kaliningrad, and the corridor through which those tanks will pass, Belarus, at the same time, before Putin's tanks pile up at the border. While Putin is preparing for a conflict with the West, Phase 0, NATO has already started that conflict and crippled Putin's entire presence in the West without firing a single shot. As Putin's reformed army melts away in Ukraine, NATO's proactive move simultaneously collapses his most strategic stronghold and his most strategic ally. What we are witnessing today is the official funeral of the two major strategic doctrines Putin has been selling to the Russian people for decades. The collapse of the first strategy, Fortress Kaliningrad, has failed. What has become of the place Putin called the dagger in NATO's heart? Its fuel supply has been cut off. Its land connection has been severed. It is dependent on sea supply. So, can it be resupplied by sea? Not anymore. Every Russian fuel tanker traveling from St. Petersburg to Kaliningrad must pass through the middle of a NATO lake, consisting of Finland, Estonia, Sweden, Denmark, Poland, and Germany. It will be monitored at all times, stopped at any moment. Kaliningrad is no longer a fortress. Kaliningrad is no longer a dagger. Kaliningrad is now a massive liability for Russia, a fuel-less prison. Putin's Baltic fleet is trapped in its own port. This is a complete disaster for Russian military planning. Second doctrine, the Union State, Russia-Belarus, has failed. What is the state of Belarus, Putin's ally, which he called our shield against NATO in the West? Its borders are locked by NATO. Its leader, Lukashenko, is panicking, begging the West but being rejected. Its economy is suffocating. This incident proves that the Union State is an empty lie. Putin cannot even protect his closest, most loyal ally from NATO's economic and legal pressure. Lukashenko's panicked confession on October 31st, "Take Poxabut, open the door," confirms this collapse in his own words. The elites and people of Russia see that their leader cannot protect either his own territory, Kaliningrad, or his own ally, Lukashenko. So what is NATO's victory? NATO's victory is not military. NATO did not fire a single bullet. NATO did not send a single soldier. NATO only used secondary sanctions. And NATO used border controls and smuggling balloons. NATO paralyzed both of Putin's strategic assets in the West, his stronghold and his ally, at the same time and without firing a single bullet. This is Putin's defeat of 20th century tank and missile warfare against 21st century financial and logistical warfare. Let's summarize. What we are seeing is the unraveling of Putin's entire Western strategy. In just 1 week, NATO, with its new proactive doctrine called Phase 0, destroyed Putin's entire playing field in the West. The US imposed sanctions on Russian oil giants. Lithuania used these sanctions to cut off Kaliningrad's oil. Lithuania and Poland, using Lukashenko's own balloons as an excuse, closed all border crossings. The result? There are no doors left open for Putin in the West. Putin thought he would elevate Russia with a divide and rule game. But NATO saw through his game and is now making a strangle and destroy move. Putin's Western Front is not just crumbling. That front is now gone. The walls have come down. The game is over. So, what are your thoughts on this? Please share your thoughts in the comments. To stay updated on new videos, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Thank you for choosing us.